You are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. French foreign minister says the investigation should be allowed to run its course before the cause could be determined of Egypt Air plane crash. The group of 7 major economies agreed to more aggressive action to fight terrorism financing. And the Minister of Commerce and Industry issues a ministerial decision on new regulations for registration of commercial establishments. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault today met with relatives of passengers on the Egypt Air plane which crashed in the Mediterranean. Speaking to reporters after the meeting at the French Foreign Ministry in Paris, Ayrault said that not even one theory was being favored and that the investigation should be allowed to run its course before the cause could be determined. He added that the priority now was to find the 2 flight recorders known as black boxes containing cockpit voice recordings and data readings from the Airbus A320, which vanished from radar early on Thursday. Speaking in a televised speech, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi condemned the breach of Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone by protesters yesterday. Abadi said storming of government's facilities and tampering public property cannot be accepted and the law must take its course with every transgressor. Yesterday, Iraqi security forces opened fire on protesters who stormed into the green zone and entered the cabinet building, drawing calls for revolt from a powerful cleric. Dozens of demonstrators were injured by tear gas and live fire. Some security personnel were stabbed. The thousands of supporters of the cleric and people from other groups are upset with the government's failure to improve anti-corruption reforms and provide security. The government briefly imposed a curfew on Baghdad, and authorities later said the order had returned after what they called rioting at the Green Zone, which houses parliament, government buildings, and many foreign embassies. The group of 7 major economies have agreed to more aggressive action to fight financing of terrorism. Finance leaders of the G7 said today, following talks in northern Japan, that they would increase exchanges of information on financial intelligence, reduce the level of cross-border transactions subject to disclosure, and collaborate on targeted sanctions for terrorist financial networks. The announcement followed 2 days of talks ahead of a G7 summit to be held in central Japan next week. Sri Lanka's government has raised the death toll from landslides and heavy flooding around the island nation to 73, as soldiers continue searching for scores of people missing since deadly landslides struck hill country several days ago. In the capital, Colombo, and its suburbs, thousands of homes remained inundated today, though there were signs of the waters receding. About 243,000 people remained in temporary shelters nationwide. Soldiers looked for bodies among thick mud deposits in the central district of Kigali, where landslides swallowed up 3 villages on Tuesday. 21 people have been confirmed dead from the landslides in the 3 villages, and 123 others are missing. Rainstorm hit Yans County in East China's Yangtze since Thursday, swelling a local river to a maximum depth of 60.9 meters, 1.4 meters above the warning water level. Drone footage showed houses and over 600 hectares of farmland and a road that were all flooded. The maximum water level was over 3 meters. The local government immediately organized emergency personnel and firefighters to launch rescue efforts and began to evacuate trapped villagers to safe locations since Friday night. More than 40 rescue workers arrived at the affected areas by motorboat, searching door to door and transferring stranded residents. After 6 hours of rescue operations, the trapped villagers have all been transferred to safety zones and properly relocated. Still to come in our news bulletin. Young girls in Nairobi are learning to code and use computers in hopes of a prosperous future. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. His Excellency Dr. Ali bin Masoud Al-Sunaidi, Minister of Commerce and Industry, issued a ministerial decision related to new regulations while registering commercial establishments, thus not required to provide any proof of the capital of companies and institutions based on commercial law, commercial registry law, and commercial companies law. The decision stated in its first article that registration of commercial institutions and companies, except joint stock companies, do not need to provide specific capital, any certificates or data related to their capital for each company. The second article stated that registered commercial companies and institutions must be committed to provide their financial data related to capital and any other data required by the ministry during a maximum period of 4 months from the end of the fiscal year. The first quarter of current year witnessed active investment movement in Mizyuna Free Trade Zone, which included the signing of a number of investment contracts and agreements with 21 companies in addition to the agreement of establishing a hotel in the area. The total number of companies were 75 in the zone from various countries, with another 25 requests for investment under review. Mizyuna Free Zone recently witnessed an increase in trade movement, and therefore the necessary infrastructure development is currently progressing according to international standards of free trade zones. In order to encourage talents in the field of poetry, a poetic competition was organized in the Wilaya of Tamrid. A number of poets from the Wilaya took part in the contest, which was attended by many poetry lovers. The participating poets read some of their poetic works that focus on affection to the homeland and its leader, His Majesty the Sultan. 10 poets were qualified for the closing day. Best Nation project in the Wilaya of Dunk is seeking to provide an educational environment that encourages innovation and discovery. It aims to connect the students with environment and the society through some educational activities. It also sheds light on Oman's role in building the Islamic civilization. The project also seeks to develop research and problem-solving skills among students. The number of Omani nationals working in the private sector registered a marginal 0.2% increase in April 2016 compared with figures for March 2016, according to the latest bulletin published by the National Center for Statistics and Information. As of April 2016, Omanis employed in the private sector reached 210,074. The statistics showed that females constituted less than a quarter of the total Omani workforce in the private sector at 51,323. The Directorate General of Medical Services in Royal Oman Police organized a scientific day on diabetes, its danger, means of treatment, and its effect on fasting. The day included 8 lectures, discussed a number of topics as classifying diabetes types in addition to getting acquainted with its spread in the world in general and the Sultanate in particular, the means of prevention and treatment, and its dangers which lead to cardiac problems. In Nairobi, young girls are learning to code and use computers in the hope that it will help them pave their way into a prosperous future. Here is a report.
Out with chalkboards and school books, and in with computers and coding. At this primary school in Kibera, a slum in the Kenyan capital, girls are preparing themselves for a future in IT.
I think it is important to learn about computers because Sometimes maybe if you grow up, you can be a person who usually uses computers and you don't know how to use the computer, and it will bring a big problem to you.
At their weekly code club, pupils learn how computers work with the help of kits donated by an NGO called Code Academy. The aim of the project is to tackle gender discrimination by giving these girls access to technology and hopefully access to jobs.
We are doing a lot of coding here with the girls, so that at the end of the day, when they'll be living here, they know at least a bit of what is the coding and what does the computer work. Just the nitty-gritties of the computer.
Kibera is the largest slum in Kenya. It's a dangerous place where cases of rape are common. For Kibera Girls' School head teacher, the after-school computer club is a way to keep pupils out of harm's way.
We do not like them to be so much out into the Kibera village, because otherwise they would engage into things that are not acceptable, or they would be abused, maybe child labor, the many abuses you would think of. So we would like that once we take a girl into our program, we keep her and make the space very safe for her learning.
Code clubs are being rolled out at schools across Kenya, Uganda and Senegal. Despite the challenges of poverty and discrimination, organisers hope they'll spark an ambition among these girls to become the computer scientists of the future.
Now for the general weather forecast around the Sultanate. Clear to partly cloudy skies will prevail over the coastal areas of the Governorate of the Fad, and generally clear over the rest of the Sultanate, with chances of cloud accumulation and scattered rainfall over the Hajar Mountains. Low clouds and fog late at night and early morning are expected over the coast of Sharqiya and Wusta. Winds will be northeasterly light to moderate along the coastal areas of the Sea of Oman, while it will be southwesterly moderate to active along the coastal areas of the Arabian Sea. Rest of the Sultanate, it will be westerly light to moderate. Seas will be rough along the coast overlooking the Arabian Sea with a maximum wave height of 3 meters, and moderate along the coast of Musandam with a maximum wave height of 2 meters. Along the rest of the Sultanate's coast, it will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1.25 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. French foreign minister says the investigation should be allowed to run its course before the cause could be determined of Egypt Air plane crash. The group of 7 major economies agreed to more aggressive action to fight terrorism financing. And the Minister of Commerce and Industry issues a ministerial decision on new regulations for registration of commercial establishments. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night.